Good morning, everyone. My name is Pam Helming, and I have the privilege of representing Ontario, Wayne, Livingston, and parts of Monroe County in the New York State Senate. And I want to thank you all for being here. Today we're talking about a subject that we've been talking about for many years now, but it's really been highlighted in the news the last few weeks, and that's public safety. Specifically today, we're talking about the safety of our children, the safety of our schools, and the safety of our communities. These, I've always believed, are the essential responsibilities of government. And I think that everyone who is here with me today would agree that when we identify a threat to these priorities, it's a responsibility of lawmakers to fix it. And that's what I'm proposing today. Joined with members of our law enforcement partners and our school districts. Just to back up a little bit, following a very serious incident at a local high school in my district, we discovered a potentially dangerous loophole in our state law. And that loophole is that neither the Office of Children and Family Services or the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision is required to notify school districts or local law enforcement before a felony offender under the age of 18 is released from custody. This lack of communication is unacceptable and it needs to be addressed immediately. Currently, the Department of Corrections is required to notify law enforcement when felony offenders over the age of 18 are released from custody. However, there is no requirement that state agencies provide similar notification prior to felony offenders being released from the custody of the Office of Children and Family Services. To address this potentially dangerous situation, I've introduced legislation to require these notifications and ensure that our local schools and law enforcement have the information they need to keep our kids, our schools, and our communities safe. It's common sense, right? But with this timely notification, the school district and law enforcement can prepare and implement their required informed assessments to ensure that the safety of the school community as well as a safe transition for the juvenile. So I just want to be clear there. The state requires that these safety assessments are completed, that the men and women of law enforcement complete it, and that our school districts complete it. But what's ironic to me and so frustrating to me that we just can't get this fixed without going through this process is that the state's own agencies, OCFS and DOCS, are not communicating with our schools or with our local law enforcement. So for them to do their job, it's a real struggle. But that's what we're proposing to fix today. The law that we are presenting, Senate Bill S-3624, is a result of collaboration and team effort. And I really want to give so much credit to the superintendent of Red Jacket, his school resource officer, to our sheriff, Dave Serencione, under sheriff Dave Rago, and to our district attorney, Jim Ritz, who really helped us identify this problem and recommended a solution. This is a great, great example of how good laws get proposed and get enacted. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Superintendent Chris Barnard of the Manchester Shortsville Central School District. Chris, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. As Senator Helming mentioned, I'm Chris Barnard, the Superintendent of Manchester Shortsville Central School District, also known as Red Jacket. I want to begin by expressing my sincere gratitude for Senator Helming and her team for bringing this bill forward and for their continued partnership in supporting our schools and all of our students. I also want to thank the sheriff and his team for their collaboration today and their ongoing commitment to the safety and well-being of our school and communities. As both a superintendent and a father, I believe that every child has the right to a safe and supportive learning environment. Ensuring this is not the responsibility of one individual or institution is important. It requires a strong partnership among schools, families, and the broader school community. When we work together, we build a foundation where students feel secure, valued, and empowered to learn. Recent challenges have underscored the need for a more effective and transparent approach to school safety and communication, one that balances proactive measures with the resources necessary for student reintegration. This legislation being proposed provides school districts with the tools to protect students while upholding a system based on accountability, transparency, and compassion. By addressing challenges proactively, we strengthen our ability to meet the diverse needs of all of our students. Anticipating concerns, implementing thoughtful solutions, and fostering open dialogue create a culture of preparedness rather than reaction. Transparency ensures clear communication and shared understanding, while accountability establishes collective responsibility, guiding our efforts to maintain a safe, respectful, and inclusive school environment. Strengthening our ability to navigate these critical issues will allow us to build a safer and more inclusive school community. I urge the passage of this measure to safeguard our schools and enhance the well-being of our students, staffs, and families. Above all, I want to remind us this work must be approached with grace and compassion. As educators, families, and community members, we are united by a shared mission to provide a high-quality education that equips students with the knowledge, skills, and character to thrive. Public schools are built on the fundamental belief that education is a right, not a privilege. And through strong collaboration, we can uphold this promise for every child. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to our Sheriff, David Francione.
Thank you, Superintendent. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here with us this morning. I'm going to start by giving a little reminder of what brings us here for the topic that we feel there's actually a loophole in. And that's New York State Executive Order 18. This was signed by Governor Hochul on May 18th, 2022 in response to a mass shooting at a supermarket in Buffalo on May 14th of that year, where 10 people were killed. Following that shooting, the Director of National Intelligence determined that domestic extremism continued to pose a heightened threat to the United States. Executive Order 18 reads in part, every county must develop a plan to identify and confront domestic terrorism. That plan must include input from law enforcement, mental health professionals, and school officials. In compliance with this directive, Ontario County submitted our comprehensive plan for a threat assessment committee to the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services in December of 2022. Extensive training commenced in 2023 and was ongoing throughout the year, where hundreds of stakeholders from the professions mentioned were trained, and many more, including medical professionals, social services staff, and private business members. Since 2024, our team, the Ontario County Threat Assessment Committee, or OCTAC, has been operational, and that's under the direction of Lieutenant Keith Green, who is here with us today. They have acted on and mitigated dozens of potential threats without injury to any victims, police officers, or the subjects of any of these investigations. In almost all cases, subjects were provided assistance they needed while diverting them from the criminal justice system. So this approach does work, and we're thankful for the dedicated members of law enforcement, mental health, our schools, and the others who serve on OCTAC. I also commend Governor Hochul for initiating this directive and supporting us at the county level with the resources we need to make these teams happen. However, the situation that brings us here today could have been disastrous. A convicted, violent felon was released back into our community without us having any knowledge of that. I am thankful for the quick action of our Red Jacket School Resource Officer and Superintendent Bernard, who quickly notified the Sheriff's administrative team when they learned that this individual was back in our community. A large-scale threat assessment was immediately launched involving representatives from nearly a dozen entities. Safety nets were immediately put in place to protect our school and community. This lack of notification puts our threat assessment team at a significant disadvantage, as we cannot manage potential threats that we don't know about. Executive Order 18 specifically directs that we identify and mitigate these threats. In order to do that, we need to know when our state partners release individuals who pose a potential threat into our community. I thank Senator Helming and Assemblyman Gallahan for their concern on this issue since day one and for bringing this legislation forward. I would ask all of our state lawmakers to support this legislation as it goes hand in hand with Executive Order 18, which has one goal: to protect our communities from potential violence through early notification. Thank you. With that, I will introduce our District Attorney, Jim Ritz.
So good morning. When we started this job 25 years ago, we didn't have victim notification. And we were able, with victim advocacy groups, to get that notification accomplished for people being released from prison. It's important, and it's important for our survivors to make sure they know what's happening. This is the next step, because this is a huge and dangerous loophole. While we were able to accomplish that and establish the VINE notification, so anybody can sign up to be notified of someone's release from prison, while parole, Department of Corrections and Community Supervision releases the names to law enforcement locally, unfortunately, the Office of Children and Family Services does not have that same notification. And that's what we need to change. And I thank Senator Helming and Assemblyman Gallahan for moving this forward. This is an opportunity for victims, survivors, and in this case, an entire community to plan and to be proactive in what they need to do with the release of somebody who causes such just trauma in a community. When we talk about finding out because this person who held an administrator at gunpoint, shut down his school, and terrorized the Red Jacket community, is out because he's on grounds is inexplicable and unacceptable. We've heard, conversation and words about being proactive. I laud the school resource officer, the district sheriff Serencion, and the work that they did in response, but we should have been able to do this proactively. We should have been able to do this ahead of time. And so that is what makes this law so important, is so we can plan ahead, so we know, so all of our victims know when a violent felon is being released from OCFS, just the same as any other violent felon from the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. So I thank you, and I urge that this bill be passed immediately. I will step back and introduce Kelly Zimmerman, who is the superintendent of Dansville Schools. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Senator, for having us here today. I want to offer a little bit of a different spin on this particular topic, coming from the vantage point of mental health. The transition of children who have committed juvenile offenses back into society is a critical process that requires strategic support systems to reduce recidivism and promote rehabilitation. Schools play an indispensable role in this transition by offering education, structure, and support that can fundamentally change a child's life trajectory. However, for schools to effectively fulfill this role, it is essential that they receive pertinent and all information about the child's history, needs, and continued risk factors. This bill, emphasizing information sharing between juvenile justice agencies and educational institutions, is a necessary step toward fostering better outcomes for these youth and ensuring a safer school and community environment. Prior to becoming a superintendent, I served as a principal, a director of special education, and I'm a New York State certified school psychologist. In all of these roles, I, with a team, frequently led the transition process for youth described in this bill. In every case that our transition team facilitated, we had to rely on families of these youth, on former school districts, or on sympathetic and willing caseworkers to piece together missing details about the child's record of behaviors, prior services and interventions, and overall academic, social, and emotional needs. Current law prevents the disclosure of this essential information. This lack of structured communication places unnecessary burdens on schools and limits our ability to provide the best possible transition and integration experience. Following youth incarceration or agency placements, Educators play a pivotal and critical role in this transition process. Juvenile offenders often face significant educational disruptions, leading to continued academic deficits, disengagement, and increased risk of school dropout. To this end, schools serve as one of the most stabilizing institutions in a young person's life, providing not only academic instruction, but social-emotional development, mentorship, and most importantly, we serve as a bridge to critical social services in our communities. However, effective support for youth in transition must rely on timely and comprehensive information sharing. Educators and school administrators must be fully aware of a student's prior experiences, behavioral history, and specific rehabilitative needs to provide required programs and address underlying issues. Without this information, schools risk being very unprepared to face barriers to making informed decisions related to the safety and well-being of our students. And by that I mean all of our students. This proposed bill amends the executive and correction laws to require that school districts receive notification and relevant records before a juvenile offender's release. This aligns with the needs of our schools, ensuring proactive preparation for a returning student's educational and behavioral supports, balanced with the safety of our broader school community. Information sharing represents a crucial step toward this goal, and ensuring that when schools receive the baton, they are equipped with the information needed to support both the transitioning student, the broader student body, and the safety of our school communities. I am grateful that Senator Helming has sponsored this bill and look forward to its successful passage.